Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 48.
Ben, I have three very important questions for you.
Go.
All right. How well do you do in cold weather?
I love cold weather. Next question.
How much do you enjoy trail running?
More than average.
Okay. How do you feel about public nudity?
Are these three questions related to each other?
Well, answer the third one and maybe.
I'm more comfortable with it than my theology allows.
Okay. Well, according to the Urban Dictionary, a reputable source, if ever there was one, there is such a thing that is called the 48-degree experience. And this is when two platonic friends decide to do a naked trail run together. And apparently the reason 48 is involved is it is said that 48 degrees is the perfect ambient temperature to do naked trail running.
So frequently when I reference the reputable source that is the Urban Dictionary, I find terminology like this that sounds like something someone just made up to amuse themselves that no one has ever actually done.
I don't know. This one seems too grounded in reality for me because I was thinking about it. And you know what? If you're going to be outside running, you do want it to be a little brisk. Like ideally, if you're going to be working up a sweat, you want it to be a little chilly. And I think 48 degrees is probably chilly, but not something people would consider outrageously cold.
Okay, but still naked trail running together.
And apparently, I don't know why they have to specify it's platonic friends. Apparently, if you do naked trail running with your spouse, that's a different thing. That's not the 48-degree experience.
What is that? The 47-degree experience?
I don't know. I really don't.
Okay. Well, if you can tell by the quality of my audio, I'm coming to you from my parents' closet in Utah.
The most soundproof room, presumably, that you could find there.
Yeah, well, there's lots going on right now. My kids are watching Seven Brides for Seven Brothers in the main room. Bless your beautiful hide. Yeah, wow, if that movie did not stand the presentism test, if you know what that is.
I don't, but that's one of those old movies that just does not stand up. Like whenever I see it on, my wife loves those kinds of movies, and whenever I see any of them, I always think to myself, man, Hollywood really got it wrong on what we would find entertaining.
Well, this is the one where the guys that live up in the past farming decide to go down to town and find wives, and there's 7 brothers. Adam, Benjamin, Caleb, Daniel, Ephraim, Frankincense, and Gideon. It's alphabetical order, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And they go down.
Did you say frankincense? One of their names
there's no, because they all had to be Bible names, and there wasn't an F Bible name in the Bible, so they chose frankincense because that's what one of the gifts they brought Jesus.
Well, I know what frankincense is from. That's just this is a ridiculous name.
It's one of the jokes in the movie. Anyway, they go down to the town and they abduct 7 girls and bring them back home. And before the town can form a posse and go get their girls back, there's an avalanche that closes off the pass, and the girls have to spend the winter together with their abductors, and they fall in love. And once the pass is clear, they're all married and everyone lives happily ever after, which is probably relates really well to what we're going to talk about today.
It's the fun, lighthearted view of Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
That's horrifying. Yeah, that doesn't stand up at all.
Yeah, not at all. So here I am in Utah. We drove across Nebraska and through Wyoming, and we got out here just in time for my son's wedding.
Yes, and again, congratulations to the entire Rich family. I'm not going to say the whole Rich family. If you are a Rich that's not related to this Rich, then screw you. No congratulations for you. But for your little section of the Rich clan in Utah, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So I've been a father-in-law for a week now.
How's that treating you?
Very well, yes. Okay. She's a lovely girl and a great addition to our family. I'm glad to have her.
Excellent. Are we, I presume, do you want to talk about the ceremony and like the events, or is it all just a magnanimous blur to you?
Let's postpone on that and do a few other things first.
Okay.
Did you have any follow-ups from last week, corrections, anything like that?
Why, you're the one that does that work.
I know. I didn't have any this time.
I barely listen to the podcast. Like I just talk to you. I don't. No. I really don't have anything to follow up on. I always enjoy listening back to us, especially It is tough sometimes. I usually have to wait a couple of weeks. I don't like to listen to the episode that we just recorded like a couple of days later. I always give it like a month before I listen to it again, because that's long enough to where if I think of something wittier that I should have said in the moment, I don't kick myself too hard for it.
Oh, nice. That's a good plan. Okay, well then let's do some bad at parenting.
Okay. Well, this is probably going to be short. I threw one up in here just because I realized that we have a house rule that I enforce, and I just realized that this is a rule. And I had to say those words. This is a rule. Stop breaking this rule. And that rule is no chanting.
Is that a common phrase in your house? This is a rule?
No, it's not. But this is one of those things that I have told my children no chanting so many times that I had to formalize it and say, all right, listen, this is now a rule. No chanting.
Do you remember the genesis? What was the first thing they were chanting that made you decide to make a rule, no chanting?
I don't. It wasn't the first thing. It was like the 18th thing. And so my kids just saw it on TV one time where it was like that comedic device where somebody starts saying the same thing over and over and everybody jumps in and they're all doing it together. And it's like this great hurrah moment sometimes. And they're fighting against authority, usually to try to drive their point home. And so my kids started trying to do that to me. And the first couple of times it was cute. And by the 5th or 6th time, it was annoying. And by the 10th time, all right, that's it. No, you are not allowed to say the same phrase 3 times in a row. That's it.
I require an example.
Anything. Like we're sitting at dinner. It's like, oh, can we have dessert after dinner? It's like, well, maybe if you eat all your vegetables. Dessert, 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 dessert. I'm like, no, that's not how this works. You will not sway me with peer pressure.
Yeah, well, there's only 2 of them.
Yeah, but all right, if you get 2 tiny children chanting random nonsense at you all the time, you would have a no chanting rule in your house too.
So it works on the other one. Whatever one starts to chant, the other one joins in.
Yeah, usually.
Okay.
Or the one will just keep it going forever because children love the sound of their own voice. And sometimes they discover like new, like quaint words and they just want to say it over and over.
I don't know why, but that just never caught on with my kids. I had no idea why. So I don't know, like if they started doing that, if my wife and I would just laugh maniacally or what.
Do you have any bad at parenting that you want to share while you've been on your glorious vacation?
I have one I've mentioned on the podcast before, but it's been long enough I want to repeat it. And that is no pillows on the floor.
You've mentioned that on the podcast before, yes.
It drives me insane. And I'll give my reasoning, and that is because the floor is a place where, we're not a no shoes kind of house. So the floor is a place where your shoes that went outside and tread through whatever is outside and come inside, and it's on the floor. Even if you vacuum once a day and sweep regularly, there's still a little bit of everything on the floor. So if you take the pillow that you sleep on with your face all night and you put it on the floor, of course you pick it back up and put it on your bed, and now it's like putting your shoes on your face.
Which is not ideal.
But there's something about kids that just makes them want to have pillows on the floor. Like the floor may have carpet on it, but it could be softer.
So what made you bring this back up this time? Was there an issue during the road trip out to Utah? Have they been putting pillows on the floor since you've been there? Are all your parents' pillows currently on the floor?
Yes, and yes, but not really. It feels like it just has to be a house rule in my house. No pillows on the floor. I'd never heard that one before, but it became a house rule in my house. Just like I saw yours was no chanting, and that's never been a rule in my house, and I'd never heard someone say it before. So I was interested to hear your justification behind it.
Fair enough. Now, I was kind of hoping, since you're currently vacationing with your parents for a long period of time, that we would get a bad at parenting from the other side, like that you were experiencing bad at parenting and you wanted to share that with us.
Well, okay, so the first time you're a parent at a wedding, you don't know what to do. Like, am I supposed to try to make a relationship with this other family that showed up that we're joining with, or are we just pleasant together for like one evening and then we wish each other well and never see each other again?
That is absolutely a function of how often you are likely to see them. Like if they live in the same town, then yes, you do need to make an effort to be friendly and have the small talk and get to know them a little bit on an interpersonal level. If they live on the other side of the country, as long as you remember their names, I think it's fine.
So my mom lives in Utah and my wife's parents live in Chicago, and they're not traveling people. And if they do, they generally drive. But this one time, my wife and I were sitting there together and she goes, "Oh my gosh, look at this." I'm like, "What?" And she holds up her phone and it's a selfie of her mother and my mother. And they bumped into each other in Chicago O'Hare Airport on a transfer.
Wow. That's incredibly random.
I know. And we're like, what the heck? Our moms like bumped into each other in public and like, hey, I know you. Yeah, I know you. Let's sit down and talk. We both love our grandchildren. Yeah.
That's hilarious because whenever I see people out in the world and I'm not expecting to see them, I do everything in my power
avoid eye contact.
To avoid them. Yes. It's like, oh, I know that guy. Dang it. I got to go down the different grocery aisle.
Yeah. Well, but this is even more random than the grocery store. At least in the grocery store, you both live in the same town.
Yes, that's true. But it would be, I don't know, I would feel worse. I would feel like
it'd be like if I saw your parents on a transfer in an airport and I wasn't in Phoenix.
And that's funny because you and my parents are both the kind of people that would flag the other person down.
Yeah.
And try to sit down and have a meal.
All right. If you saw my parents in an airport, well, you've never met them yet, but well, you kind of met my mom tonight.
That I met your mom's voice. She
was in her pajamas, so she didn't want to go in front of the camera.
She sounds like she has a very pleasant personality.
She likes you. Yes.
Like that's wrong. Okay, all of the rich family that has not met me personally.
You don't need to disabuse my family of liking you, Josh.
Don't like me. I'm not likable. I'm a cantankerous, like, bad person. Like, seriously, this is the reason we have the friction and the dynamic that makes this podcast even halfway worth
This is not successful because the reason you and I are friends are the same reason they like you. All right. Well, one thing you know about my family is that when we get together, we love to play games. So I've sent you like 2 or 3 selfies this week of me and just random gaming groups. This is why I tried to convince you to come out here for the wedding, because you could have got in on this action.
Ben, if it was any other year, if this was 2022 and coronavirus was like nice and on a low simmer to the point where we don't have to worry about it like we just worry about the flu all the time, then
it's been surreal. It feels like it's gone.
It feels like it's gone. Okay, well, I mean, I know what you mean. Everybody's acting like it is gone, and we're.
But it isn't just that. I mean, at the beginning, when people were still unsure whether to follow the protections or stuff or not, I knew people that were getting it.
Okay.
Like firsthand and secondhand, and people that were dying and stuff. I haven't heard. I don't know anyone for 2 months. Not a soul.
That's wonderful, and we're probably taking it more seriously than is absolutely necessary. But we'd rather be safe than sorry. We've got the high risk people in our household or whatever. But
you and I are both vaccinated, right?
I am vaccinated, yes.
And to any of our listeners, if you are not yet vaccinated, the Bad at Magic podcast highly endorses you to go out and get vaccinated against COVID-19.
And the Bad at Magic podcast takes no legal responsibility for any bad things that happen to you because you get vaccinated. So there's the 2 bookends for that one. Like, are you trying to convince me to travel back in time and tell my past self to come out to Utah to play board games with your family for the weekend?
No, I just wanted you to know what you're missing out on. So I want to talk about some of the games.
I have to say that every selfie that you've sent me with you playing board games with a bunch of people has like made me genuinely super jealous and mad that I wasn't there to participate. Like
it would have been great.
I have a handful of board games that I do share with my family that we play occasionally. We played occasionally before all this happened, and I have been chomping at the bit to get back to them. So this is like a recovering drug addict getting pictures of, dude, look at these massive lines I'm snorting.
Look at this cocaine and this heroin.
Man, that cocaine and heroin looks good.
So what's first on your list?
First on my list is Scythe. Like, I want to sit down and I want to have an epic 4.5 hour game of Scythe with like 5 other players.
All right, I'm going up to Idaho next week. I gave my brother-in-law Scythe for Christmas, and I've never played it, so I'm totally playing it and sending you a selfie of it.
Oh, that game is so great.
That'll be awesome.
God, so jealous. Okay. What other games have you played?
Okay, the other on the list was a game called Jamaica. Have you ever played it?
I've never played Jamaica, no.
Okay, it has a really good pirate je ne sais quoi. What? That's not it. We love to do French badly on this podcast. Pirate...
Mise-en-scène.
Yes. Mise en scène.
It feels very piratey when you play it.
Yes. Cute little pirate drawings and stuff. So it's a big board game of a map of the island of Jamaica, and you can play up to 6 other players, and it's just a race around the outside of the island. And while you're racing around the outside of the island, you're gathering treasure and fighting the other pirates and plundering the colonies. And it was really fun.
Yeah, because screw those colonies. What do they ever do for anybody?
This is a piratey game, and it's, that lighthearted, like, Pirates of the Caribbean ride kind of thing, where it's the harmless version of pirates, not the grim reality of what's actually going on here.
Yeah, let's not talk about the grim reality of pirates.
That reminds me of this little internet comic I've seen. There was like some children's book, and it'd be like, "Be a good pirate and don't steal things from other people." And the caption to it is like, "I don't think the people that made this know what pirates are."
Well,
I'll put it in the show notes.
Because we as parents know that pirates are super cool, but if your kids are below the age of understanding that murder is only okay sometimes, then you have to have like G-rated pirates.
That's it. They're G-rated pirates. They have fake eye patches and hooks.
Yeah, I wear this eye patch as a fashion accessory, not because I lost it in a horrible boarding accident.
Or because I got something in my eye, and that's the best our ship's doctor can do is amputate.
Or shrapnel from the cannonball going through the mast like took off this half of my head.
So the other board game I played that I'd never played before this week was called Alhambra, which is a reference to the ancient wonder of the world in Spain. And this is like it's a building game. We are racing for points against the other players. So every turn you can choose between the actions where you can choose from a series of random cards that have currency colors and amounts on them. And then there's a selection of tiles that you can buy based on how much currency you've accumulated. And then over the course of the game, you accumulate points based on how much of your world wonder you've constructed, and there's lines of strategy you can play based on trying to hedge against certain buildings over the other players. It's a good interactive strategy game that's easy to pick up.
It sounds very Settlers of Catan.
Kinda. On Settlers of Catan, you're all on the same island and you're kind of bumping into each other. And in this one, it's like you're completely independent from the other players geographically, but you're competing against them for resources and building materials.
So it's some kind of global economy in a pre-World Wonder era.
Yeah, it doesn't, the flavor of it doesn't play out very well. You can't. It's like we're all building the exact same world wonder in alternate universes, but we're all competing for the same resources in one universe.
Oh, it's Crisis of Infinite Earths in the Marvel universe. No. Like, you can't drill down into the flavor of games like this because then they just don't make any sense.
Nah, it falls apart. Yeah. Anyway, good. Those games were both fun. Jamaica, Alhambra, great. We also played a game of Point Salad, which is a classic. I really enjoy that one anytime I play it.
A listener bought us a copy of Point Salad, I think a year ago now, and we've actually played a handful of games in the last few weeks. And every time I play that Point Salad game, I'm amazed at both its simplicity and its complexity.
Yeah.
It's great.
So, has it taught your kids math?
No, not really. It taught me humility when my daughter, who doesn't understand basic strategy, numbers, or math, blew me out of the water because, like, I just want all the cabbages. And she took every card that had a cabbage on it. We're like, oh, great, sweetie, you're doing wonderful. And she won. Killed all of us. It was ridiculous.
Awesome. Yeah, I went by and my niece had her iPad out and she was using it to do the math because she couldn't do the math, but I think she won as well.
I like that game because if you're really good at math, you can keep track of other people's points.
That feels like a false path to go down. Like you think you understand what's going on, but then it just at the end, the randomness of it takes over.
I don't think so. I feel like if you could really Rain Man that whole scenario, you could realize that, you know what, if I take this cabbage, I get 3 points, but if I take that beet, then my wife loses 6 points, and that's way more important.
Yeah, I guess if you could keep track of everybody's. So the other game I played a lot of this week was disc golf, and I'm really getting into it, Josh. I'm really getting into it. I must have done 12 rounds of disc golf this week, maybe 15.
With like 18-hole courses?
Yeah, and I've gone to every course that's in the immediate area here, and now I'm looking for more.
Define the immediate area.
10-mile radius.
So like 10 minutes?
Yeah.
You drive to these courses?
20 minutes, yeah.
Oh, so you drive to the course, and then you walk it. And now disc golf courses are, now from my understanding, like the same size as a normal golf course. So
no, probably about half.
Okay. But there's still a decent amount of walking involved.
Yeah.
So you're getting your steps in while you're on vacation.
Yeah, definitely.
How many other rich members have you dragged along to go disc golfing with you? So
when I got here, my nephew was just getting really into it, and he's 17, so I've taken him with me almost every time I go, and then we bring a random assortment of people with us in addition. So I brought my son and nephews from 3 different families, and my dad tonight, we brought him with us for a round. It's great. I highly recommend. 2 thumbs up.
Okay, so just ballpark the percentage for me. How many people that went with you disc golfing were not volunteers? Like they were just conscripted into going disc golfing with you?
Only one.
Oh, just the one?
Yeah, just the one. My youngest nephew, he's a twin. His brother was into it, and I think he got peer pressured into coming. And the whole time he's just going, I have no idea what's going on. I'm terrible at this.
And how old was he?
12.
That's at the age where it's floating between, oh, it's fine, you'll pick it up, and really, you need to knock it off. You're bringing everybody else down, you buzzkill.
It's a great opportunity for our family in particular, I think, to just have a nice moment where we appreciate each other. Because I was impressed to see my other nephew and my son and my other nephew really encourage him. And I think by the end, he was feeling encouraged. I don't think he'll come again, but he didn't go away feeling terrible about himself.
Of all of these games that you've been playing, disc golf, the board games, how much have you been winning? Like, how good at these games are you?
I've definitely been improving at disc golf. On a learning curve, there's like the point where you're still, it's exponential. You go from just really horrible to horrible and then somewhat passable.
This sounds like a really long explanation for you've been losing a lot, but please keep going.
Well, what counts as losing in golf? The worse you are of it, the more you do.
Which is, that's not what you, yeah. The better you are, that does make sense. I like that. I want to play more sports where the better I get at it, the less of it I do.
But one nice thing about disc golf is the courses are almost always free, relatively uncrowded, and it moves fast enough that you can get on anytime. You don't got to like reserve a tee time like you do with real golf. And the equipment's relatively inexpensive and it's reusable. It's not like golf where you hit a ball into the water and you never see it again or off into the woods. They're big, they're colorful, they're easy to see. You only need like 3 or 4 discs and you can go out and have a good time.
And they're only rarely ever eaten by alligators.
And of course, I played a lot of Magic the last couple of weeks.
Oh,
I've been having a good time.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you said you brought like a draft box or something for the family, right?
Yeah, so we've been playing lots of crap. I can't remember the name of the set. Strixhaven. We've been playing. We've done Strixhaven Sealed. We've done a Strixhaven Draft. Having a great time with that. I haven't played any Strixhaven Standard, but I don't have enough cards for that.
This is a golden opportunity. Like, this is never going to happen to me, but for you have enough people to actually do a draft, which means you really should just have a cube that you can carry around with you to events like this. And you don't have to keep
my cube. I brought it with me.
You have a cube? Ben, You have a cube?
Yeah, I have a cube. You asked me for a list, and I haven't done it yet. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm having vague memories of this. I did demand you send me a full list so we could optimize it, and you refused to do so.
All right, so for our listeners, there's lots of different ways to play Magic, even with casual players. One style of Magic you can play is what's called limited. And in a limited format, what you do is you have random products, usually in unopened packs, but it doesn't have to be unopened packs because those cost like $4 a piece. In unopened packs, you open it up and you construct a deck on the spot, and then you have a duel against some other players and do a mini tournament. It's good because it's kind of an equalizer to begin with random product. Having more experience and knowing the sets better helps you a bit, but it's not as much of a unfair environment as constructed, where you can spend an unlimited amount to get all the best cards and practice your ideal strategy.
Yeah, in constructed formats, it's very common to see Timmy 12-year-old show up for his very first ever tournament on Friday night with his $10 deck that he bought, opened up, and brought to the table, sit down across from somebody like, me, who has spent $300 and 4 weeks of his time optimizing every single slot in this deck, and I just crush him in 5 seconds. It's not fair to poor little 12-year-old Timmy.
So yeah, we've been playing in person, a lot of Strixhaven. Love that set. Love the flavor of the Harry Potter college kind of theme thing. Has so many great cards like academic probation, cram session.
Have you read any of the flavor text on these cards?
Oh, I read all the flavor text. It's excellent.
The flavor there. I was reading Combat Professor again today, and I love it. This creature who is all about combat. He's Combat Professor, and the flavor text is: can anyone tell me what this general did when he lost this battle? Anyone from the reading? It's just nothing to do with the game, man.
That's great. Yeah, so enjoying that. Also, Modern Horizons 2 recently came out, So that set's really impacted Modern. I've been playing Modern on Magic Online, and I've also done 2 limited Modern events. One was a draft, and one was sealed. I got my butt handed to me both times. The pros are out and prowling in that format. I felt like I just made like 1 or 2 suboptimal plays and just got destroyed.
Well, I look at the spoilers and I watch the videos and the content from Modern Horizons 2. And because they're putting the product directly into an older format, so new players aren't going to be exposed to it, they decided that it was okay to have the world's most complicated cards ever. And like, oh yeah, that's fine. We'll just make a giant pile of super complicated cards and they'll figure it out. It'll be no problem. So you have all of these cards that by themselves are insanely complex.
Yeah, there's madness, there's graveyard interaction, there's life gain, there's exile, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Well, there's like every keyword flavor, like every single mechanical keyword that has existed, I think, is in this set.
Yeah, listeners, if you're thinking about starting Magic, don't start with Modern Horizons 2.
No, it'll terrify you away from the game forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny because I was playing with my brother-in-law who we were playing Magic, and he'd gone away for a week, and he'd come back later and he says, hey, can I get that sealed deck out again and try to build another deck? And I'm like, sure, that sounds great. So I got my old one out and just dusted it off. I didn't make any changes to it, but he completely built another one with his where he changed 2 colors in it. And he really started enjoying himself. And he says, this game's really complicated, but it's also not that complicated. It's really simple at its heart. You build up resources in a linear way, and then you're trying to get your opponent to 0 life, and I kind of get what's going on. And he plays a lot of games, so
if you're building up resources linearly, then you're not doing it right.
Well, he beat me, so
well, good on him. But this is not the Good at Magic podcast, so
yeah, and thus our podcast. All right, we need to do Bad at Logic. We did a bias last week, so we're due for a logical fallacy this week. So the card I picked from our cute little deck from the yourlogicalfallacyis.com website is Begging the Question. Begging the question is a circular argument in which the conclusion is included in the premise. Now, this one's hard to spot because it's usually kind of long and drawn out. I wrote here, this logically incoherent argument often arises in situations where people have an assumption that is very ingrained and therefore taken in their minds as a given. Circular reasoning is bad mostly because it's not very good, which is an example of it.
Yeah, yeah, it just talks about itself and just is baked in. I can't, it's difficult for me to come up with, like you said, examples on the spot. It's just something you have to be aware of, where if you can be presented information or you can be presented with an argument or a question or anything that is phrased in such a way that it builds in the assumptions and like they're guiding you to the conclusion and it's all built into the statement. So even trying to respond to it seems like a trap because it's all in there. Like everything that we were going to say about this argument is in this question already.
Yeah, so the example I came up with that I wanted to give, I tried to shorten it so that there isn't too much distance between the two halves of it. But freedom of speech is good because you can speak freely. There's no additional information given. It's just circular logic. But the Wikipedia article says, begging the question is not considered a formal fallacy, an argument that's defective because it uses an incorrect deductive step. Rather, it's a type of informal fallacy that is logically valid but unpersuasive in that it fails to prove anything other than what is already assumed.
I see.
Which is the main point.
Yeah, it's just one of those tricks that if you don't recognize it when it's thrown at you, it might sound good as a sound bite.
Right. Sounds like you're proving something, but really you're just circling back on the assumption you've already made.
Huh. Is this kind of the thing that I do when I ask my kids rhetorical questions? Like,
give me an example.
Okay, so there's 2 parts to this one. Did you hit your sister? And then the follow-up question to that is, do you think good people hit their sisters?
Yes, exactly. Good job begging the question.
Yeah, I don't think there's any... I built that trap specifically because there's no good way to answer that.
No, there's not. I don't hate my sister, I think. I'm wondering if that's true or not.
If I can trap my children inside of their own minds in a little maze of good behavior that they can't find their way out of, I have succeeded as a parent.
I feel like more often than not, you're trying to convince us why it's good to use bad logic.
That's true. I'm defending this one again, aren't I?
Yeah.
Uh,
All right. Well, we'll keep our eyes peeled for examples of begging the question.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. And every time we talk about this, I'm becoming more and more concerned that I'm over here feeling like I'm part of the solution, educating the masses about these different things, and I'm realizing more and more that I'm part of the problem. Like I'm the guy that's out here doing these things to people. Am I really helping everyone, or am I just turning them on to my own tricks?
I feel like I should say something encouraging, but this is all self-evaluation you're doing.
I was really begging the question. There is no good answer to what I was saying.
It's time.
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, if you say yes, like, yeah, you're just turning people onto your own tricks. You're admitting that I'm a bad person for using these fallacies in the first place. If you say no, then I am the righteous person that I think that I am. And yeah, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, that's a different one. I can't think of. It might actually be one of these cards we haven't gotten to yet. But you can ask someone a question that has no right answer. Like, Do you beat your wife often?
You changed a couple of those words, and that's not a question we should be asking. But
because if you say yes or you say no, there's a lie built into the question.
Yeah, no, I don't beat her often. I mean, not that often. I think just to answer the question, Ben, no, not often at all.
The best example I saw of that was in the Netflix special called the Chicago 12, Chicago 13. I can't remember. It's a number. It's about the the riots that happened at the Democratic National Convention back in the late 60s, where it was just a lot of different groups that were in opposition to the war at Vietnam, all converged on Chicago right at the time of their presidential political convention, and the politicians in Chicago were determined to avoid the controversy by keeping the protesters as far away from the convention as possible, and it caused a clash between the protesters and the police, and a bunch of people ended up getting hurt. There was some violence, and a bunch of the leaders got arrested, and they tried them all together all at once, and they made a movie about it on Netflix, and it's excellent. I recommend it. And there's a scene where somebody asks one of the Chicago 12 a question just like that, and he goes, "Man, you phrased that question in the form of a lie." And I was like, yeah, you call them out for their logical fallacies, you hippie.
Good on you, hippies.
All right, let's be bad at English.
I feel like I'm always bad at English. You're specifically referring to bad at British English.
British English. This is one I heard my friends say sometimes. It'd be one of those where, like, you could have a conversation with a British person, and aside from the pace and the accent, it might have fit in America, but then they'll say something like, "Well, that was bang on," and I'd be like, "Bang on, what's that?" So I'd get out my book and write it down. In the U.S., we might say "on the money." It means spot on, right on.
Yeah, I was going to say, from context, I mean, there's not really anything else that could be.
Yeah, but then there's this weird thing that happens where then that joins the lexicon. I looked at it. It started coming in about 1943. The British started using that phrase that we would say spot on. They say bang on. That was bang on with absolute accuracy. But then about 3 decades later, it gathered another meaning that isn't the same. And the verb meaning of bang on is to talk too much. You're like, well, if you don't stop him, he's going to bang on all day.
I love when you slip into your British accent. It's perfect.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with absolute accuracy. Now it's about like your mouth going open and closed, and somehow you're just supposed to be able to figure out bang on either means spot on or talk too much.
Well, I'm going to give the British a pass on this one. I'm not going to get on their case because we have a lot of things like that too. Like just think about how useful the word cool is, and how just that's in every part of our language.
Yeah, and like in Canada and Australia, do that thing where they, or in the Midwest, the United States, where they say yeah, no, yeah, or no, yeah, no.
That's a thing?
And yeah, no, yeah is an affirmative, and no, yeah, no is a negative.
I feel like that's extra words for no reason. But if it starts and ends with whatever it starts and ends with, that's the affirmative or the negative.
Right, but you can cut off the third one and it still retains a meaning. Like, no, yeah. It means yes, and yeah, no means no. But
Okay, that I can see, because there is the first one, like if you're saying yeah, no, that is yeah, I acknowledge and comprehend what you're saying, and no, that is my response to your question, your inquiry.
right. Well, yeah, but I don't want to bang on about this one too much.
Oh, he got me.
Okay, so I hit the pause button on telling you about my son's wedding. I don't know. Do you just want me to just kind of give you the rundown of what all happened?
Do you want to do chronologically? You want to hit the high points and the low points? You're the storyteller here. Weave me a tapestry. Ben, paint me a picture with my imagination brush of this glorious day that was your oldest child's wedding.
Okay, so there's something to consider here, and that is, everyone has to decide. You grow up being exposed to the traditions of a marriage in the United States of America. And there's some of them that are almost universal. The bringing everyone to a chapel and a flower girl and bridesmaids and groomsmen and all those kinds of things. That you just expect something that exactly or something like it will happen, and that's what constitutes a wedding.
Okay, you're talking about the actual ceremony now.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Because that's when I think about American weddings, the last thing I think about is the ceremony.
Okay, what do you think of first?
Okay, so I love weddings because weddings are prom for adults. It's the only time you ever get really like gussied up in like suits and ties and flowy gowns and dresses. You're gonna have this kick-ass party at the end of it. There's going to be loud music and a DJ going nuts doing all of the stupid crazy dances that you want to do. You do the electric slide, no one cares, everybody's jumping in. You do the chicken dance, nobody cares, everybody's jumping in. There's going to be, at least for non-LDS weddings, there's going to be alcohol flowing like water, and everybody's going home and getting some that night. Everybody.
Yeah, I guess so. So those aren't the conventions that I think of, because I grew up a Latter-day Saint. And we very much hold and esteem marriage to be like the crowning beginning of having grown up. Like, you've lived your life as a child, and now you're starting your life as a grown-up. You're getting married.
You should put that off for as long as possible, listeners.
So if you want to be Peter Pan, you can just be an old maid.
Or an old bachelor. Have all the fun. Have all the money. Ben, just so much money.
Well, here was the problem. Usually, traditionally, when you're going to have a wedding, it's a young couple getting married, and, unless they're, I guess, older professionals, they'll probably try to do it near the bride's family, right? Am I misreading the tradition there? Because traditionally, the bride's family helps pay for it, and it's going to be near her house, and everyone's traveling to where the bride is to do the wedding.
So I think that's traditional, but we're probably moving away from that. I have no stats on this. I'm pulling this from the air, but I feel like in today's day and age, it's on the couple to fund their own wedding. I presume. I imagine that the parents could kick in, but I think the main responsibility is on the people getting married. Yeah, and that's pretty much how it was. But Alicia and I also had this moment where we're like, well, we have 6 kids here, and we want to give them a little bit of money to help them get started right and have a nice party to celebrate their new beginning. But whatever we do for the first one is going to set a precedent for the second one, and we hadn't thought this through yet. So they got a Costco gift card for like a couple $100? Well, I don't want to disclose the actual amount on the podcast, but we talked to them about what their plan was, found out how much they intended to spend. Then since we were doing this over video conference, we hit a timeout and had a talk together about what we... You went behind closed doors to have a discussion. Were there lawyers present? I feel like there should have been like a notary public involved. Yeah, and then we went back on with them. We're like, all right, here's what we're willing to do. And they wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it across the table to you. And you looked at it and you crossed it out and wrote something else and slid it back. Well, no, I don't want to say it like that at all, because while we forced this discussion, they didn't initiate this discussion. They were planning to fund it fully independently themselves. So we were inserting ourselves into the equation to say, hey, we want to help. Because it would be nice if your wedding had chairs. Right? If there was a roof. Yeah.
So we gave them a little bit of money, and they were very grateful. And so the thing that felt bad though is because they were doing so much leading right up to it, there was just a lot of planning and preparation and stuff that we weren't able to be present for because we were coming from so far away, and there were some other considerations like the fact that we were packing up all of our belongings at our house in Illinois to move to Louisiana. So we got there 2 days before, and there wasn't time, but luckily they were very low key as far as like bridesmaids dresses, and they weren't requiring like everyone to rent tuxedos and those kinds of things. But it had a few of the traditional like colors and themes and stuff. They rented this old warehouse that looked like it was from the turn of the 20th century that had been converted into like a convention space. So it had like concrete floors that were shellacked, so it was like really shiny and easy to clean, and like these industrial tables and wooden chairs, and then just like a kitchen and a barn and like a shop garage door, and then like strung up bare light bulb lighting in the place.
That's cool.
It was a nice aesthetic. I'll post a photo or two. And then what they did is, so in our church it's traditional to do a wedding for a couple in the temple where we are sealed for time and all eternity, but it's not open to the general public. And so out of consideration for her family members that had traveled from Mississippi, we decided to have a civil ceremony conducted by a Mormon bishop with everyone present. And then the next day they went to the temple and were sealed forever.
Right. And that's, so we're kind of blending into our main topic now, because I'm going to ask, I'm planning on doing a deep dive into the whole LDS marriage thing later on in the show. So let's save some of the
So let me finish the story.
Let's stay out of the tenets of marriage and talk about the wedding.
Okay, so this was my real feeling of like COVID is finally over. Like we had a party where everyone was invited and there wasn't really any considerations about how many people could be there or maintaining social distancing or whether or not people were wearing a mask. It's just like everyone showed up. No one had a mask on. We filled the place up. Everyone hugged and shook hands and talked and stuff. And it was like COVID never happened.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's put a pin in that until we get the 2-week, quarantine period for this whole event.
Okay.
Over. This could have been,
as far as I know, this wasn't a super spreader event.
That we know of right now, knock on wood. Boy.
So, it was probably equal amounts. There was an interesting thing because my son and his wife met while they were both missionaries serving in California. There was this weird thing that happened where there was an equal part of the groom's family and the bride's family present, and then there was a third equal part of missionaries from their mission present that were all finished with their missions, because a lot of missionaries go on their missions from Utah, and since they were in the local area, were here attending Brigham Young University, they all came, and their president, he was retired from that mission, so he came, and it was like a mission reunion. There must have been 40 missionaries there, and it just looked like a youth dance of 21 to 25-year-old kids.
21 to 25-year-old
looking at these
kids.
two. All looking jealously at these two and going, I want to get married like them.
That's not what they were thinking.
Yes, it was.
That is not what they were thinking. They were thinking of the other thing. I want to do the thing like they're going to get to do, but we won't go there.
So they took a nice photo with their mission president, and there was a dance, and it was like you said. I don't think we did the chicken dance, but it was fun. They had a little bit of food and a nice reception, and the ceremony was nice, and it was everything I remember my own wedding being that's different than the way yours was, and that is it was just a time to celebrate this commitment and transition to a new part of life, and the joy of two people falling in love and preparing to start a new life together. And then all of the love and togetherness that comes to gathering together with all your family to celebrate such an important thing.
Aw, that sounds so fun. I cannot imagine a ceremony or a party to that level without alcohol being involved. I really can't.
Just imagine it without alcohol.
I'm imagining it without alcohol, and it like winds down, and everybody kind of goes home at like 8:30.
Yeah. Actually, I think that's exactly what happened. Oh, but that reminds me of one detail I need to throw in. So at 8:30, when we were cleaning up the venue to turn it back over, we'd kicked the bride and the groom out, and they jumped in the car and took off. And we were there cleaning up the place. And because we're the families we are, some of my younger siblings have younger children, and the details are a bit murky. But what happened at some point is that one little child may have dared another little child to pull the fire alarm.
Ha! Now, is this all right? So is this one of those like school fire alarms where it's just loud noise and flashing lights, or is this the one that kicks on all of the sprayers and like the HVAC system goes or whatever?
I don't think there is such a thing as a pole handle that makes the sprayers come.
I think in like high tech places, they've got those.
Those are usually automatically actuated by things that can't be simulated.
Okay. Well, that's a bummer because it would have been way cooler if the whole place got flooded out.
Loud noise and flashing lights and the fire truck showed up. But a 3-year-old little boy got to see how serious it can be when you take a dare from a 11-year-old.
Oh. Did the firemen stick around and make him feel better by like letting him sit up in the truck and things?
No. The grown-ups involved were pretty keen on not letting it be fun.
Okay. Well, that's I get it, and I get that. Like as a parent, I would want my kid to take this very seriously. This is not something that you ever do. As like an uncle or a bystanding adult, I'd be like, "Hey, put the kid up on the ladder. Cool. Let the kid climb the ladder. That'd be great."
Yeah, I got to learn how to disarm a main facility fire alarm system.
Why, Ben? Do you insert yourselves into such weird situations like that?
Because the hosts weren't present. We just rented the building, but they weren't there watching us use it. They're like, "Here, run this checklist and text me when you're done." I'm like, "Hey, the building's turned over and the fire department's on the way."
Yeah, that's when you peace out. It's like,
so
just go ahead
later.
Go ahead and keep our deposit. Bye.
Yeah, it only took a minute. It was easy enough. My brother and I teamed up, knocked it out. It was a good time.
Such a weird person. All right, that's cool. And so then you're just enjoying the before and after stuff now then. You're still in Utah with all the family are all still hanging out, it seems like.
Yeah, so we have a family reunion down in southern Utah where it's warm and near a pool that we're going to go to at the end of the month, and there just wasn't time to come out here, bring, everybody out here and then go back home and then come out again. So we're just hanging out. So I've been out here, I've been hiking, I've been playing disc golf, I've been today we spent all day at the pool. The day before we went to these beautiful gardens. It's great, lovely. Just feel like we're having a good life, low budget vacation.
Just out there in Utah, living your best life, huh?
Yeah, spending time with all the people I love, and working on my marriage, those kinds of things.
I'm imagining like that internet comic where you see the guy having fun. It's like, I'm having a great time, and you see the progressively larger people like in the background behind him that are ready to beat him up as soon as he turns around.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
They're holding sticks like they're pounding clubs into their palms.
Yeah, exactly. And like the first tier is like having to move, and the next one is Louisiana, and the one above that is Nuclear Strategic Command. Not to be a downer, but there you go.
I'm probably just clueless about the whole thing. Like, I should be worrying more about those things than I actually am, because my wife is doing all the worrying for both of us right now. She's like, "Come in here and help me draw out this floor plan for our new house that we just put a deposit on." I'm like, "I'll worry about that when we get there."
Did you actually buy a house this time? Because
no.
I think you've been living on base usually, haven't you?
Yeah, we lived off base for this one. We haven't lived on base in 12 years.
Oh, well, that tells you how out of touch I am. So
yeah, so we rented a house in Illinois, and we thought we might have to buy in Louisiana, but we found a rental that's within our budget, and yeah. So she's trying to decide in advance, like she always does, where she's going to put all the furniture and which kids are going to be in what bedrooms and stuff. And I guess I just love and trust her so much that I just try to not get involved in that.
Translation: I'm just going to let her do all that work and then implement her plan when she decides on it.
Right. Yeah. I might have.
Does it have a wraparound porch?
No, sorry. We did not get a Southern Colonial with a wraparound porch, but we looked at a few.
Yeah, and
they're there for the taking.
I know. And you should have got one, because how lovely would that be?
Well, the thing about getting a wraparound porch is you also have to get the house that comes from that era, and they frequently aren't renovated to modern standards. So we got a newer build that didn't have that, but it has a good size area for the washer and dryer.
Well, which is also an important consideration when you're washing what I can only presume to be a circus load of clothes every day.
Yeah, definitely a big consideration. We got a super high capacity washer and dryer, and that thing is awesome.
Nice. Well,
if there were a whole category of things in my life that I just never regret spending too much money on, it's cleaning appliances. I own a commercial rug doctor, top of the line washer and dryer, super great vacuum cleaner, and I never feel like I spend too much money on those things. I'm like, oh, clean.
So we're going down a rabbit hole and a tangent here, but my wife and I recently purchased a new washer and dryer.
Uh-huh.
Because the old one was, remember, I talked about it a few episodes ago where I loved the thing because it was just quirky and I knew how to strip it down and fix it and things, but it was just to the point where if you looked at it wrong, then it would air out and not wash your clothes. So we bit the bullet and had to buy new super high capacity washers and dryers. And so far it's been fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Don't regret.
We were both sitting there like, oh, these washer and dryers are so expensive. And then we remembered, like, wait a minute, when did we buy those washers and dryers? Oh, 12 years ago? Well, okay, I guess if this is going to, like, if we take the expense of this thing and divide it by 12 years, or however many loads of laundry is going to go through it, that's probably a minuscule expense.
Yeah, I don't know why we're so bad at doing that economic cost comparison analysis on things. Like, you really want to wonder, should I spend an extra $100 on a mattress that I'm going to sleep on for a third of my life for the next 10 years?
So we have...
Is that $100 really that important?
You keep hitting up these things that happen in our life. Did I talk about our mattress situation?
Yes, you did.
Okay, yeah. So we still have the split separate mattresses. Mine is still as hard as a rock, and I still love it. It's only slightly more cushy than the floor, and that's perfect.
Yeah, so the guest bed that we're staying in is one of those adjustable air beds that has two bladders for each side of the bed, and we didn't know it. We just came and laid down on it, and my mom knocks on it. She's like, "Hey, here's the remote for the mattress, so you can adjust it." And she hands it to me, and my wife didn't catch the mischievous look in my eye, and I grab it and immediately deflate her side to 0. And she's sitting next to me, going, "Hey, stop! That's enough! That's enough! Stop! Stop!"
And she just sank into the bed. That's funny.
Good times.
That's what happens when you hand the husband the remote control to the mattress.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So let's transition to our main segment then.
Okay. So, which we kind of already did, but this makes segment, since we were on the topic of LDS weddings and marriages, since this one just happened, congratulations again. And if the newlyweds are listening, stop listening and get back to business. Like, I don't know what you're taking time out of your day for me for.
They're on their honeymoon right now.
Yeah, exactly. If you're listening to this and you're still on your honeymoon, you are wrong. You are doing it wrong. Okay. So, first of all, listeners, you may not realize this. Ben is a practicing member of the LDS, Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church. I don't know how you could have missed that, but if you're all the way into this episode, you didn't know that. Now you know that. I am not. I am a non-practicing nothing.
I've never heard you call it that.
Well, I don't know what... I'm tiptoeing around this thing because I know a lot of our listeners probably do have their own beliefs, and people get really...
But no one gets offended if you say, I am a principled atheist.
Well, and I'm adjusting that view as I get older and wiser and think about more things and try to be more
That's not
inclusive.
offensive.
Well, so I don't really know. I'm not religious in any formal sense. There's no like practicing thing that I am a part of. Whatever my beliefs are, they're kind of fluid and they change based on crap that I read and things that I listen to and hear.
It's funny though how your utilitarian, well-earned non-belief in God lands us in the same place a lot of the same times. Whether I'm coming from a deontological point of view and you're coming from a utilitarian point of view, we still arrive at the same conclusion.
Well, that's because
it's a good idea to wear a mask.
We're both brought up in a predominantly Christian society. So regardless of the fact that I'm not Christian, I have predominantly Christian values. That's just how that works. Geographic disposition at birth, I have no control over that. Along with the idea that we had in the Memetics book, the Virus of the Mind, talking about how a lot of the most successful religions were the memes that fit into and coincided and reinforced good civilization in the first place. So
I was kind of making a different point, though. That is that even though it might have a deontological background to it, like we do this because God said so, if you actually evaluate the utility of it, it's still a good thing to do.
Oh, so what you're saying is that it's surprising I'm still a good person even though I'm heathen scum.
You nailed it.
Nice.
You were bang on.
Stop it. You're freaking British. Nonsense. All right, so anyway, there's since we're on the topic, your son just got married. You're LDS, I'm not LDS. Marriages are, like you said, in America, there's the certain things that are expected as far as like the civil ceremony goes. But all the religious portions of the ceremonies can be different. Is it I think it's the Catholics that kneel at one point during the ceremony, and it's common for like the groomsmen to write funny things on the bottom of the groom's shoes. Have you ever seen those?
No, I've never seen that. I'm looking that up though.
Oh yeah.
So They kneel with their back to the congregation, and so then they can see the stuff on the bottom of their shoes?
Yes, and it's
Okay.
traditional for like the groom's shoes to say something like "Save me" or something like that.
Okay. I'll look that up. That's good.
But then I think it's Jewish faith. When they get married, they crush glass wrapped in like a
they wrap it in cloth and then stomp on it and say Mazel Tov.
Mazel Tov. That's the best part. Everybody gets to yell Mazel Tov. The chair dance where they get lifted around the room. I think that needs to be a more ubiquitous part of wedding ceremonies, I think.
Yeah, there's lots of silly traditions. Tossing the flowers, carrying across the threshold, the veil, the flower petals.
So weddings, the ceremonies themselves, what happens. The beginning, middle, and end might be some variation, but the end state is the same. But the religious portion of it is going to be different for everybody. And so I think we should have a conversation about this in two different aspects. I want to talk about two different things about marriage, okay?
Okay.
And the first one is, like, you've already talked about your son's wedding that just happened. We should talk about your wedding, like how that all played out, since you have a more firsthand experience with it.
Okay.
I'm interested in the story of your wedding, as I know one little tidbit at the beginning that I think is frankly hilarious, and I want you to retell that in more detail. And then the second part is I want to do a little bit more, like I did some research and some reading, and I have a couple of questions for the specific beliefs that your faith has when it comes to marriage.
Okay.
And before we even start this, I've got to do the big caveat where I'm not intending to offend anyone with this. I'm not intending to put you personally on blast for any of this. If I say things that sound mean, I don't mean it that way. This is all coming from a place of genuine curiosity, so people don't at me. I'm trying to be nice.
I think that comes across. Okay, so 22 years ago this month, I was in my terminal assignment as a full-time missionary. And I was nearing the end of mine where they're doing the same thing they do in military basic training. They're like, okay, we've been having you do this really tight regimented execution thing, and now we're going to send you back into the world, and we don't want you to be wound up so tight that you're going to be weird when you get out of here.
Oh, so they issued you a girlfriend for a while?
No.
Okay.
But you got that speech in basic training, didn't you? We definitely did at OTS. They're like, now don't go out and like brace up against the walls every time someone that outranks you pass by.
No, Ben. I went to the Air Force Academy. They expected me to do that for 4 straight years and never turn it off.
Well, they didn't give you a decompression speech?
No, good Lord, no. They didn't tell us anything.
Okay. Well, as a missionary, you're not supposed to date and you're not supposed to get distracted by thinking about girls and stuff, but you spent 2 years teaching people that the ultimate expression and fulfillment of God's plan is to be united with someone of the opposite gender and start a family together and procreate and multiply and replenish the earth.
Okay. So get out there and get them, Tiger, and they slap you on the bottom and kick you out the door.
They give you a pep talk. When you get done, your mission president calls you in. He's like, okay, you're going to get released as a missionary. You're not going to go home and be a missionary anymore. Now you got to go carry on God's plan.
Go get them, boys. Hoorah.
Yeah. So that's the mindset you're in. You've just spent 2 years telling everybody how it's done, but not being able to do it yourself. And now game on.
Oh, and the only thing stopping you from getting down and doing the horizontal boogie is you got to find somebody.
Yes. Well, okay.
Preferably willing of the opposite gender.
Yes, preferably opposite gender. I want to parse what you just said, and that is the tension between your raging hormones that are from God as well, and the religious side of it. And it's a tremendous tension. If you grow up under the deontology that you are sinful if you have sexual intercourse outside the bonds of marriage, but you're feeling just the powerful urges that jump on your back like a monster, and then you got to wait until you get married in order to fulfill this, but once you get married, it's okay. The only logical conclusion of that is, I need to hurry up and get married.
Or, from an outsider's perspective, this whole thing could be begging the question. Haha, reference.
Yeah.
If, like you said, God is responsible for these raging hormones in your system, he very well could have set it up so where if you weren't married to somebody of the opposite gender and you had sex out of wedlock, it could be painful. Like, it could be actively bad for you, but it isn't. It's still probably the best thing ever that my hypothesis is men chasing women has driven all decisions that have ever been made from the beginning of time, period.
I will not dispute this hypothesis. Okay, so yeah, there's all of that. So I was released as a missionary in July of 1998, and leading up to my mission before I turned 19 years old, I didn't ever really have a steady girlfriend because I was very much raised and steeped in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints tradition that, like, up till now, you're kind of practicing, but you're not playing for keeps because you're going to go be a missionary. And when you go be a missionary, you can't be married, you can't have a family. It's the same as the academy. In order to go do that, you really need to be able to dedicate yourself to it, so you can't have any dependents. If you have any dependents, you can't be a missionary. So we're not going to play for keeps yet. You're too young. You're getting ready. You're not going to do that. When you turn 19, you go for 2 years, come back, game on. So when I got back and I was 21, I was like, all right, game on. So I started dating. My first or second date, my second date, I'll save my first for another time. My second date after I got back was a Swedish foreign exchange student.
That is the worst decision you could make, or the best, like, because she was probably like down, ready to boogie. She was blonde and gorgeous and so wrong for me. So I took her on one date. I was like, well, that was such a bad idea. But anyway, we had a good time. We dressed up fancy and went down to Chicago and had a night on the town, and I took her home and said a respectful good night. I think I may have hugged her maybe, and that was it. I was like, no. So then I went back to dating like hardcore like members of the church. So I dated this one girl that was you're moving on too fast before I can make my funny comments. All right, go ahead. Did you almost get date raped by a Swedish foreign exchange student?
No, I think she knew early on what she was in for. If she didn't, she figured it out as the evening went on. That she didn't need to worry about me. I was opening doors for her and dropping her off at the doorstep.
Oh, yeah. Very nice. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Please go on.
It's okay. So I dated another girl that was a returned missionary herself, and which is less common because at the time they made girls wait an additional 2 years before they go on missions. Now it's less than that. But
older gal then.
Yeah, so she was older, and I went to pick her up at her apartment. And she invited me in, and she was ironing her blue jeans. And I had this moment where I kind of stared off into the middle distance and pondered if I really thought I could have a good life with the kind of woman who irons her blue jeans. And I decided that wasn't a good idea.
Are you? Wow. Okay.
I feel like an episode of Seinfeld here. Like, you're George and I'm Jerry. George, she was ironing her blue jeans.
There are so many jokes in my head that they're all getting stuck in the door jamb because they're all trying to rush through at the same time. But like a 19-year-old kid making a decision that's going to impact the rest
21.
of his life. Oh, okay, sorry. A 21-year-old kid making a decision that yes, this is an important long-term decision, but ultimately it boils down to, am I going to get down with this lady in the next like foreseeable future? And like you're making a decision based on the blue jeans being ironed.
Okay, you're giving me a hard time about it, but isn't that a red flag to you? Or would you just be like, that's fine, she's hot?
Did you ask her why she was married? Did you inspect the rest of her house? What other weird, like, excuse me.
It was immaculate. This is just the thing. This is just the little vignette that delivers the entirety of the person, I think, in a nutshell.
This sounds like exactly what you want, because you've mentioned before, you like it when, like, you come home and the house is spick and span. Like, this was the perfect opportunity.
Let me take 60 seconds to give you one of the profound life lessons I've learned in the last 20 years. And that is, sometimes the thing that you want the most is paired inseparably to something else you don't necessarily like.
Ooh. In the context of marriage and lifelong commitment, that's a rough realization.
And Alicia, my wife, has this quality of being very
open,
carefree, that is paired to being a little bit messy and cluttery in her personal life.
Oh man, tread carefully here, Ben.
But I've learned how profoundly I had to think that those two things couldn't. I thought I could get both, but I didn't like the girl that ironed her blue jeans. She was too anal retentive. It was annoying.
Okay, let's call her Betty. How did you you had decided in the first 10 seconds of seeing Betty on that date that you were done with her? Did you just like turn around and walk out like, you know what? I'm calling an audible.
We had a nice pleasant evening. So that's another category you get as a missionary. You can spend an evening with anyone that could just be cursing you out to your face and just be pleasant and polite and have a nice evening and say goodbye and go away and forget all about it and not hold a grudge and not start a row. It's just, you just move on. That
is actually a really good skill that I wish I had. Because there are people to this day that I still want dead for looking at me wrong.
For an unpleasant evening? Why you?
Like, I will never forget that unpleasant evening.
Yeah, so maybe a week after that or sometime about that time frame, I was at church with my parents. And while I was gone, okay, I got to tell a side story about this. So when you're a Latter-day Saint missionary, there's this tradition. Very much, there's a whole set of traditions that go along with being a missionary. They're a lot like marriage, but are exclusive to the church. Before you go, they make a big deal out of announcing your location because you receive a letter from the prophet that tells you where you're going and you don't know. So some people do a big production where they gather all their family around. Now they do like Zoom conferences or webcasts or something. Everyone gathers around and they open it up and read it out loud and everyone cheers no matter where, even if you're going to Wisconsin and or if you're going to Indonesia, whatever. Everyone cheers and it's a big deal. Well, another one of the traditions associated with it is when you return from your mission, everyone meets you at the airport. Now, pre-September 11th, which it was for me, they could come all the way to the gate and they would bring balloons and a sign and your girlfriend that waited for you for 2 years would be there dressed in her cutest dress or whatever. And everyone was waiting and you'd come off the airplane and say, hooray, welcome home, Elder Rich and stuff.
Here's the girlfriend and just throw her at you.
So that's high on the list, but it's not the only thing. They missed you and you've got 2 years of movies to catch up on and stuff.
It's the only thing on the list.
So I didn't have my heart set on that, but it was definitely on my list of things to expect. So I fly into Chicago airport and I step off the airplane and I walk out the gate and nothing.
Oh, nobody showed up to pick you up at the airport?
And when I say nothing, I mean there was not even anyone there to pick me up.
They forget about you?
This was pre-cell phones. You know, this is like when you'd have to go to a payphone and call someone. And then as I step off the plane and not even my family's there, let alone my friends or anyone from the local congregation or anything like that, I realized they moved to a new house while I was gone that I've never been to, and I don't even know where it is.
Was it in the right state? Like, were you at the right airport? Did they move to Kansas and you flew into Chicago?
I'm like, oh crap, what do I do? Like, no one's even here. I can't call them and I don't know where to go. So I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll go get my luggage. So I went and I was waiting at the luggage carousel and they showed up and they got stuck in traffic. So I got to move on. And that's typical of my life. Sometimes, you know, the pomp and circumstance you expect doesn't happen, but you still have your milestone.
We did it. We found you're bad at parenting. Like, this is your parents bad at parenting. They didn't show up on time for you returning from your mission.
Yeah, and I guess so.
I was sad and disappointed and at the luggage carousel kind of kicking the dirt like, oh, everybody else got a big surprise.
No, I just spent 2 years telling people to forgive others. It would, if I held a grudge over that, I'd be somewhat of a hypocrite.
All the other missions got a big banner, a party, and a new girlfriend when they got to the airport, and I didn't get anything. I didn't even get a ride home.
So, because my parents moved to a new house, they were also in a new congregation, which happened that even though they moved only like 10 miles away from where we lived before, it was a completely different area. And their new congregation included the university, the Northern Illinois University. So any Latter-day Saint students that were attending that university attended our family congregation. So it's kind of a mixture of students and families.
So a very target-rich environment for a single young man.
Yeah, well, I guess that I don't know if that was necessarily on my mind, if it wasn't on my mind every waking moment. So I went to church and they're like, okay, after the first meeting where we're all together in the chapel, then we'll divide up into age groups and all of the unmarried people of marrying age are going to this one room together. So I was like, okay.
What? Wait. They did like a cattle roundup where it's like, all right, all you folks that aren't married that need to be married, and it's ridiculous that you aren't. We're going to put you in that room, and you don't come out of there until you have a fiancé.
Yes.
This is both awesome and terrifying. But
okay,
go on. So
I go into that room, and you sit down. And it's a 12 by 12 room with a ring of chairs around the outside. And I sit down and everybody's taking their places. And I'm just doing the casual scan in the room. These are a bunch of people I'm going to get to know. We'll have activities together. We'll go play Frisbee in the park or go have s'mores night on Monday or whatever.
That's what you're thinking the whole time. Sure.
These are all things that happen. And then my wife appears in the doorway. She wasn't my wife at the time, obviously. Alicia appears in the doorway, and it was the thing. It was the ray of light and the choir of angels singing and stuff. I saw her. I'm like, holy crap, that girl is beautiful. And there's only one chair left in this room, and it's right next to me.
Was she the first girl to walk into the room?
No, she was the last.
Oh, okay.
Which I should have taken as an omen.
A lot of ways we can take that. But okay. So by serendipitously, Alicia shows up last. You're already attracted to her, and she has to sit down next to you.
Now, this is like my... one of the things the church also does is we're a lay ministry, and they feel that the best way to keep people engaged is to give them additional duties, as we call them in the military. So
unpaid
I've been
jobs.
assigned... Yes, unpaid jobs. So I've been assigned the additional duty of being a young single adult coordinator, which meant that I was supposed to help plan the activities and keep people notified of what's going on and those kinds of things. So she came in and sat down next to me, and it was my responsibility as the young single adult coordinator to get her number.
Oh, it was required. Excuse me, ma'am. I'm sorry. Part of my job. What's your name? And what's your telephone? Oh, look at this. You're on my list, and we're paired off. Look, the next 3 weeks, we've got stuff every day together. Man, what are the odds?
So she came in and sat next to me. I immediately got her number and her name, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop looking at her. I couldn't stop thinking about her. And I immediately commenced stalking her.
This is the part of the story that I am somewhat familiar with that I want to hear again, because I love the fact that you committed a low-level felony to Please continue.
So because I had her contact information, I was able to find out which dormitory she was in at the university, and I didn't have anything going on that afternoon. And so after church got out, I went over to the dormitories where she was staying, and I called her up. And I was like, hey, you want to go for a walk sometime and we could spend some time together? And she's like, sure, maybe. And I'm like, well, how about right now?
Because unbeknownst to you, I found your address and followed you to your house.
And she was like, well, yeah, I guess. I said, okay, I'm already here. And she's like, oh, okay. So she came out and we went for a walk together.
Alicia, you should have got a restraining order against him. This man followed you out of the blue. You didn't tell him where you lived, and he just showed up there. Like, this is red flags, Ben. This is you ironing your jeans. Like, this is not okay behavior.
Yeah. Okay, I want to take your side for a minute and agree with you wholeheartedly. And I want to say that there's things sometimes that happen that otherwise in other contexts would be really terrible red flags that just get offset by some things. And you get a lot of social currency in the church by being a clean-cut, clean-shaven return missionary. Just like you can be an officer pretty much for free as long as you have a college degree, even if it's from Embry-Riddle.
Okay. So just... you're kind of leaning on that. You're going to get some slack from, like, there is some social credits, some social credentials that you have that, like, I'm not a horrible, terrible person.
I'm not just some random schmo that showed up. I at least showed that I could finish a 2-year mission honorably discharged.
Okay, that's fair. I still assert that what you did is now a crime. Like, this is 100% justifiable to get, like, if you did nothing else, Ben, if she said no and went to a judge in this day and age, she would get a restraining order, no questions asked. Yeah,
of course. Agreed. So if there's a fairy tale where there's love at first sight and it's two-sided, I don't know if this is it. I don't want to, put any feelings into her mind and heart, but she just wasn't ready to rearrange her life for me yet. And I was, because I was just positioned for it. She was there. She was going to college. She had her extracurriculars. She was, studying, that kind of stuff. I'm not in college right now. I'm looking for a job.
She had her whole life ahead of her. And like she walked in the door and you saw like your whole future laid out in front of you. She walked in the door, saw you and thought, oh, look at this schmuck. Look at this low life that got stuck with this job.
Trying to get my number. So, I asked her on a date when we were out on that walk, and she's like, I'm kind of busy. I was like, I was trying to be understanding. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll see it like the next activity or something like that. So the next activity rolls.
Oh, no. Oh, she did the thing where she lets you down easy, lets you know explicitly that she was not interested in you, and you kept showing up in her life.
Okay, this is an example right now what's happening of if I let you say this, she's going to get mad at me later for not correcting the record. So here's the actual truth. She was busy. Okay? If she was on this podcast right now, she would say, Josh, I was actually busy.
Well, of course she has to say that.
When you're in love with someone, you make time and that kind of stuff. But we had just met, and she was like, "I'm busy," and it wasn't like the shooting me down busy. She was actually busy. She was on the speech team every other weekend. They traveled to another university for a forensics tournament. She had to study for that when she wasn't in class, and studying for another class, and she had a full class load. She was actually busy.
I'm not gonna tear down this idea that you have in your mind, but I could try, but I'm not going to. So go ahead, continue.
But the lies we tell ourselves in society are that we like to be able to disguise letting someone down gently as the actual thing. So when you actually get the actual thing, it's hard to tell the difference.
If this is,
you know what I'm saying?
If this was a made-for-TV movie, like I can see, like one of you, either you or Alicia, like on a deathbed, like with the beeps going. It's like, honey, we've had such a great and wonderful life together. Yes, it's been tremendous. There's just one thing I have to tell you. What's that? I wasn't actually busy. Blah, and then flatline.
Good thing she can't get rid of me by dying. Okay, so
that's later. Yeah, we'll talk about that too.
So she was busy, and I'd see her, on Sundays at church or on Mondays when we had the young single adult activities, or during the weeks if there was a dance or something like that. Over the next 4 to 6 weeks, I can't remember. And every time I'd see her, I'd ask her on a date. I'd be like, hey, I got something coming up, or I'm going to Six Flags, you want to go, or, whatever. And I'd ask her on a date. And every time it was, I'm busy. I can't remember the exact number. I want to say it was 4, maybe 5 times she shot me down.
That's just so bad. That's so bad, Ben.
But it wasn't, I didn't show up at her apartment again and ask her on a walk. It was just, we happened to be at the same place. She came voluntarily. I came voluntarily. I saw her there. I asked her out again. And she may have said something to the effect of, I can't this week, but don't stop asking me. Maybe. I don't know.
Okay. So
if she didn't say that, that's the message I was getting.
All right, you need to make the case that you're not a psychopath stalker to me. Like, were you pursuing other ladies at the same time? Or
yes, I dated Jean's girl during this period.
Okay. And it clearly you have in your mind somewhere that while she was turning you down, she wasn't doing it hard enough that you thought that she wasn't interested.
Agreed.
Okay.
However, I maintain to this day that the time she actually agreed to go on a date with me was the time I was not going to ask her anymore. I was going to be like, okay, maybe she is actually just blowing me off and I'm not getting the message. So I'll ask her one more time and then I'll move on.
And that evening was magical.
And the rest is history. So from that time,
6 kids from that 20-something years later.
From that time that she agreed to date me until the time we were married was 4 months.
Whoa. Oh, yeah, this is something that always, earlier today I was thinking about this, and I was like, it's something like 6 months. And then you had to remind me again, it was 4.
4 months. We dated for 2 months. We were engaged for 2 months, and then we were married for time and all eternity. And it's been 22 years. We're about to celebrate our 22nd anniversary. Now, I want to point out that there was a lot of circumstances why the engagement was so short.
Well, why? You don't have to. You just. It sounds like when you say it like that, it sounds like you're trying to defend your craziness. Ben, anybody that's listening halfway to this podcast right now knows you're crazy. And crazy for Alicia and just a little normal crazy. But there's who cares? 4 months is fine. You don't have to justify it to me. You guys have been happily married forever. That's I personally am chalking it up to raging hormones and probably schedule conflicts.
Yes, yes, both. Exactly. Yeah, that was a very good simplification. Schedule conflicts and raging hormones.
All right, so either we get married in 4 months, or either we get married in 2 months, or we wait for 18.
Right. Yeah.
So then, I don't know. Because you then just different strokes for different folks, I guess.
Yeah. All that. So we decided to rush it instead of taking the long track, and mostly motivated by raging hormones.
Yeah, that was an excellent story of personal experience, and it leads me into a bunch of questions in the nitty gritty about the underlying mechanics of the whole thing. Do you mind if we transition to that?
Do it.
All right, with you have my authority to launch into tangents and anecdotes about your own personal experiences with your wife throughout this discourse. Okay. So, like I said, I did some reading into LDS, and again, this was one of those things where I think I got halfway into it, and I'm like, he tricked me into researching LDS doctrine again. Like, you keep doing this to me. It's like, oh, I'm a non-practicing nothing, but boy, howdy, I can tell you a lot about the LDS faith. No, so the first one, this was new to me, and like you mentioned it a couple of times, is the civil versus the celestial marriage.
Okay.
And so
good terminology. Yes.
Okay. And so let me clarify what that is first. And so the civil ceremony is the legal aspect, and the corporeal, the mortal flesh, meat and bone version of being married together forever or whatever.
Yes.
Okay.
Good vocabulary.
Oh, you like that? All right. So this is the till death do us part bit of getting married. But now the celestial marriage is a separate thing that happens, right? Is it a separate ceremony? Does it take place in a different place, a different time?
When the local government permits it, they're one and the same.
Okay.
But some places like Italy and some other places, they require that there be something to conduct the marriage ceremony that represents the governmental blessing. And then there's also a religious ceremony that represents the God blessing.
Is the verbiage or the actual ceremony different?
It really, you touched on it when you said the words "till death do you part." That's the version of the governmental version. The Latter-day Saint version is for sealed for time and all eternity.
Now, is this an option? Are you required to have the celestial marriage if you're getting a civil marriage in the LDS faith?
When you get a celestial marriage, when you're sealed for time and all eternity, it's also a civil marriage, but not vice versa.
Okay, so that's kind of my question is, yeah. The one encompasses the other, but not the other way around.
And you can have a Mormon bishop marry you that's just till death do us part.
Okay, so you can decide at a later time if you want to do the celestial version.
Yes.
Okay, so
but
is this?
But it's very much culturally frowned upon. It's be like, hey, we think we like each other, we're going to get married, but we're not so sure if we want to get married forever. It's supposed to be like, if you're serious enough to get married, you want to do it forever.
The way I read this, and I'm glad you brought up that thing, because this feels like a reverse prenuptial agreement. It's like, hey, sweetheart, I love you a lot. We should get married, but you need to sign all this first. It's like, well, if you think it's going to work out and we're such a good couple, why am I signing this? This is like the opposite version of that. It's like, well, we should totally get married, but the celestial marriage, maybe we wait on for a year or two and just feel things out. It's like, well, what do you mean? That's not a thing either. So I don't know. That's just kind of a weird concept to have.
Yeah, if you're two practicing Latter-day Saints, this is supposed to be the pinnacle of humanity. Like, this is your goal of fulfilling your existence on Earth. You're not supposed to be satisfied with anything less.
Okay, so that's good, and that touched on something else I'm going to bring up in a bit, but I'm still on the celestial marriage portion of it. In the reading, I came across this idea of that this not only is this like sealed together, like we are so into each other that we want to be like one and the same for not just in the mortal realm, but in the immortal realm. But also that it's not just that, it's also a requirement for exaltation, which is a word that I've read that I still haven't entirely wrapped my head around.
Yeah, so exaltation is the word we use in our theology that means the ultimate expression and achievement of salvation, which isn't just being saved from sin, but also as children of God becoming like He is. So this
is super heaven.
Yeah.
So to get into
they depicted this on South Park, I think, once. Do you remember the one? They're like, "Welcome to heaven. Over here is the people that were saved. The Mormon. The correct answer was Mormon."
Yeah. Don't get me started on the South Park Mormon stuff. Yeah, but so this is okay. So the fact that then you have the tiered afterlife structure. It's like I don't want the LX version. I need the LXT version of salvation, and that's going to require this extra.
Let me express this in the simplest terms I can. It is, if we are God's children and we're here on earth, then of course the ultimate achievement of becoming like He is growing up as children and then becoming our own whatever he is.
Which is, but then not you, a version of the merged essences of you and your spouse then.
Right, because, yeah, that's how families work. They're ultimately expressing their creation of new life.
Okay, so then this is a really stupid...
And that's a two-part thing.
I get it. So it's the fusion of the two that make the penultimate. But then that brings up a really stupid comment of, then why is it still he? Like, I think Alicia's getting shafted. If you two are going to merge souls forever in the afterlife and become this penultimate being, why is it a he? Why can't it be a she or a they?
You know that our theology incorporates the belief in a celestial mother, right?
Apparently I don't.
Okay, yes, we do. We believe that God has a wife, an eternal wife. She's a separate and distinct being, and that they are what created us as his children.
I'm not going to ask about the tiering or the org chart of that. I'm just not going to go there.
The main way that we deal with it now is just separate but equal, like bicameral government.
Okay, I'm not touching that one.
Okay.
So what you're talking about there then kind of leads into this other conversation of the stigmatization in the cultural aspect of marriage from the LDS faith. So, like you said, you were born, raised, like this is the doctrine. This is what we believe. This is what you are taught. This is what you're an expert in. This is what you would pick if you went on I Want to Be a Millionaire or Genius Show or whatever that was, Mastermind. So then it feels like then you're setting up this again. Don't at me, people. From the outsider's perspective, it feels like that's a lot of pressure on kids that have the raging hormones.
It is. It really is.
So this is not only,
and it's tragic when it's not fulfilled because it can leave people depressed.
Well, and this is kind of where I'm becoming trepidatious about these things because
go ahead.
Teenagers make the worst decisions ever because they're just raging sacks of hormones. And I understand that you spend time and energy and effort, and you've done a tremendous job pumping all of these values and morals and
no, it's okay.
Kids, but they're still prone to make teenager dumb decisions. So
yes.
with two things, with the stigmatization of you make this decision, it is binding not just for this life, but forever. Yea, verily, all eternity. And I guess, actually, real quick tangent, is there a celestial divorce?
Okay, that's a great question. I want to answer it by talking about another theological problem. And this goes way back before the restoration of the church in 1830. Go back to like Henry VIII, where you're growing up under this weird, kind of...
Do not call Catholicism weird, Ben. Listen, Catholics, he didn't say that. He did not call Catholicism weird.
The traditions that became the Roman Catholic Church.
There you go.
Were... had reached this point where they were just in this cycle of self-loathing where they would have things like, well, what if you have a bad marriage? What do you do? Well, God doesn't allow for divorce. It says so right here in the Bible, so you just have to stay in a bad marriage.
Oh, okay. Well, if we're talking specifically about Henry VIII, there was other driving factors behind why divorce is a good thing, but okay.
But they had a war and started a whole new religion just over this issue.
Well, it was that they started. He beheaded his wives and started a war over the male progenitization of the royal family. But okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, but you can make a whole deck of logical fallacies over the things that have come out of this particular problem. What you take a couple of young people and they're supposed to get together and love each other at least till death do us part, and it's supposed to work out. But what if it doesn't? But it's supposed to work out. But what if it doesn't? But it's supposed to work out.
But what if it doesn't? People are different, Ben.
Yeah, okay.
I'm fond of saying this. You can't pick the cereal you're going to eat for your entire life without having the sampler pack first.
We do this in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints too. And it comes with 3 rounds of, but what if it doesn't, before they'll actually get to the real answer. And the real answer is, even though you can go to the temple of God and have someone with the authority seal you for time and all eternity, it can be undone. There's a process for it.
Ooh. And that I'm imagining that's a difficult process.
It is a difficult process. You both have to ask for it, but eventually they grant it and you're untied in the eternities as well as in real life that just takes a lawyer like it does anywhere.
Are those people like published in a newsletter that gets circulated? Are they branded? Do they have brands on their foreheads?
No. The church is good about trying not to stigmatize it, but those are also the things that people know. Like, oh, they're the ones that thought they had it figured out but didn't.
So, So how is the stigma in church when it comes to people? If a couple decides that it's not working out and it's better for everyone involved if they split up, like objectively, like, yes, I understand the whole.
Yeah,
like,
there's the obvious, violence and infidelity and those kinds of things. And there's just the incompatibility issues. And when you take a couple of young people with raging hormones and maybe they haven't fully even matured into rational grown-ups yet, and they rush into a marriage, what can happen is they just aren't able to work it out, and they aren't able to figure it out. I have a few friends my age recently that are Latter-day Saints that have gotten marriages, and I think we may have more self-loathing and confusion when we reach that point than other people.
Okay.
This was supposed to work out. This was blessed by God. I prayed about this, and this is what I thought I was supposed to do.
I've been taught since I was a small child that this is the thing that you do, is you get married and you are together forever and you make it work.
Yep. I have a good friend that I knew when we were both in high school, and she's in the process of getting a divorce right now, and she's absolutely torturing herself over it.
So that's the internal stigma. Is there external? Like, I'm sure, like you said, everybody knows this in the congregation. Does that become a problem?
Okay. So I think our church is wrestling with this as much as any has ever, that we try not to shame people in a way that is unchristian. And Christ loved people, and he was criticized constantly for being amongst the sinners. Look at you. You're hanging out with the sinners and the publicans. What the heck? You're supposed to be with us holy priests that look down on other people and shame them.
Did you just say sinners and Republicans?
Publicans, Publicans. It was a Jewish profession at the time when they were under Roman subjugation, where they collected taxes, and they were very poorly looked upon by the Orthodox Jews.
Thank you for explaining that. You really threw me for a second. All right.
Publicans.
Not Republicans. Publicans. All right, go ahead.
Anyway, ultimately, if you're being a good Christian, you aren't shaming, looking down upon, stigmatizing anyone for anything.
Okay. But so people are people.
Does it happen sometimes? Yeah. Do we try not to do it? Absolutely. And anyone I know that I think of as a good practitioner of my faith, it doesn't.
Okay. Well, okay. Like I can't. I don't have anything to like come back at you with on that, because frankly it doesn't exist. I found one study that talked about divorce rates among LDS and compared to the national average, and apparently divorce rates among any population is incredibly difficult to nail down. And so it's like a 2002 survey. It was the one that had the most firm numbers that I could find, and it showed at the time, 20 years ago, that LDS divorce rates were only 5 or 10% below the national average.
Okay. Which is significant in a population, but also surprisingly high.
It goes, that kind of information goes both ways, in that, divorce is on the rise, like across the spectrum. And while LDS, like the cultural thing, like discourages it, like it still happens. It's still happening. Yes. I honestly think it's fine. I don't know. But again, I don't sanctify.
And I don't know if that's even a healthy thing. Maybe there's unhealthy marriages out there because there's this cultural stigma against breaking up marriages.
Well, and sometimes, I don't know, at least for me, from the civil standpoint, there are a lot of good reasons that a divorce should be granted to people. Especially when kids with raging hormones are shoved into a room and said, you all are single, you need to fix that, figure it out.
Yeah, it's funny because in the military, like we talked about before, there's this cultural stigma where you got a bunch of young kids and they go and you're making them live in the dorms because you have to keep them under supervision because they're still young kids. And there's two ways out of the dorms. Either you get promoted out or you marry out. And so sometimes like 18-year-olds will run off and get married so they can collect double BAH or whatever it is and move out of the dorms. And in the military, those marriages almost never last. And people jokingly refer to it as their starter marriage.
Yeah. There is an enormous population of divorced NCOs in the military.
Yeah, they got married the first time when they were 18 to 20, somewhere in that range.
Right, which speaks to what I'm talking about. Like, they were incentivized almost to get married at a young age. Fiscally, Like there was external pressures,
Right. You'll get more money. You'll get to move out of the dorms.
But this is kind of the same thing. Like there is still very real external pressure to make a life-altering decision very, very quickly. Not to mention the internal pressures of, man, I need to get out there and like get this done. And we're talking about the urges again. Yeah.
And those are two very different contexts, but it's both the same kind of thing. Like a lot of external pressure and incentive to get married young.
Yes. So when this situation arises in the military, we have this outlet where, we both made a really terrible decision. Let us undo that. And for the most part, there's no real cultural stigmata for NCOs that have had a previous marriage.
No, not really. It's become a joke and a byword.
Yeah, exactly. But they're not looked down on. They don't suffer anything like in the organization for it. It's just whatever they suffer in the relationship is not. That's not a thing. That's not something we talk about. That's private.
No.
But there's no external negativity coming to them for making that decision.
And occasionally, I don't know about you, but I know a few that actually stuck with it. And they're the ones that I find that are my age, but also have kids the same age as my kids. Where they're like, they got married young and started having kids and just managed to work through the hard times and stuck together.
Which is great if people can do that, but that doesn't always happen for everybody. And there are circumstances specifically where that becomes completely incompatible. And I have a couple of bullets if we want to move on to those.
Yeah. Right before you do that, I do want to talk about that, though, because I don't want to give you the impression that love at first sight, I fell in love with my wife, I stalked her till she married me, and we've been happy for the last 22 years. Even for somebody that spent 2 years teaching people that marriage is the ultimate expression and culmination of God's plan here on the earth, after my wife and I got married, it was such a short courtship period that we still needed to get to know each other for a while. Now, we shared a common faith and a common background and common goals and ideals and intent for our life and stuff, which helped keep us coherent. But there was a lot of friction, I'd say, for probably about the first couple of years where we were just getting to know each other. And if it wasn't for all those commitments and ideals, I don't think we'd have been able to get through it. But there were times where I'd say I felt betrayed almost, like there weren't adults around me saying, hey, this isn't going to be easy.
Well, yeah. And you always get this, at least when I was growing up, I always got from my parents that like marriage is going to be a thing where you're a team and like you love each other and then you work through this adversity together. And I never saw the stuff in the background that was happening, this friction, the arguments, the conflicting ideals and
just the existence of two different souls trying to synchronize their lives.
Yeah. And for me, like I feel like I got married in my mid-20s, and I had a lot of emotional maturity to still go through. But that's because I'm a very emotionally immature person. Like you and Alicia are obviously were very emotionally mature at a young age, which helped you through that stuff. But if I had gotten married when I was 19 or 20, that would have been a train wreck.
So there's one thing I'd say that even in failed Latter-day Saint marriages that I think can be missing, that I felt like I really had. And that was, I wasn't just committed to starting this thing, I'm also committed to being good at it. So I wasn't like, okay, now that we tied the knot, you got to take me as I am. I'm like, okay, I can see you're upset at me right now. And once I've had a chance to cool off, I'll say sorry. And then I want to get better at this. I want to be a better husband. I want to not make you mad in the first place. I want to figure out what you like and do it. I want to have less friction over these kinds of things. And so I make charts, I write them down, I set goals, I have her give me feedback. I mean, I want to be a good husband. And I take on it like anything else in my life I want to be good at. If I want to get good at baseball, if I want to get good at math, you got to like practice and set measurable objectives and achieve them and move on. And I take that approach to marriage. And I think she does as well. And she is an incredibly loyal person. And that shared commitment to the success of our marriage has made us get through the hard times and brought us to this place where we really feel like a coherent unit that's inseparable.
That's a very touching sentiment. I'm glad you shared that. The only thing I have to talk about for that is I also thrive on feedback from my spouse. Like, Nicole, you've got to tell me the things I do well and the things I do poorly because I want to be better at this. The difference is I'm not emotionally mature enough to take it all the time. And she knows that if she tells me some negative feedback, I'm going to pout about it and be like grumpy for a while. And so she's very cautious about how she gives me negative feedback.
Yeah, so I want to give a quote I think I heard from one of the general authorities in my church. They said, husbands, if you want a revelation, Ask your wives how you can be a better husband.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. Get you a revelation.
There's a reason we call them our better half, people. Like if you haven't, listeners, if you're listening to my voice and you are single, you will figure this out.
Here's the formula for a successful marriage. Choose wisely.
Here's Ben Richards.
Treat kindly. That's it.
Okay. Hang on. Choose wisely. 19-year-old
Choose wisely.
sack of hormones that is shoved
Treat
into
kindly.
a room full of the first available women that you can possibly find, and do it quick.
I want to point out it also rejected other people in that room, but yes.
But that was one room, Ben. Like you're killing me with this.
Okay, yeah, but you kill me even though you say to be utilitarian and logical. It only takes one. Like there's no minimum number. There's no minimum number of false positives you have to go through before you can have the success.
This is true, but you're biasing your own personal experience and trying to apply that to everybody. There might be people.
Yeah, but you're doing the opposite. You're doing the same thing in a different way.
Yeah.
You're saying there is a minimum number and you have to achieve it.
No.
There's no minimum number.
What I'm saying is that your minimum number does not correspond to everybody's minimum number. And if somebody has to go through 5, 6, 7 years of being single and dating women before they discover or figure out who they are personally as a person, or before they figure out what they want in a life partner, or until they find somebody that's just generically compatible because they're weirdos, then why should they not be afforded that time, or why should they be culturally looked down upon?
That's fine. Whenever you bring this up, you always bring it up like I have been the one that has asserted that there's a minimum number. I never have.
Well, but I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about you, the LDS community, are still pressuring these kids like, thou shalt not do the one thing you want to do until you're married.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to get into all the theology and culture and societal norms behind that, but it's not a new idea that you wait until you're married to have sex.
No, but it is increasingly phasing out of non-religious culture.
I don't actually know any statistics on that.
I
do understand the modern permissiveness of society, but like you said, that also leads to things like higher divorce rates.
That might be a false causal link, but we're not, neither one of us have any statistics on either of those things, so we can't really dive into it. We both just have our gut feelings, and they are informed from totally biased perspectives, so we can't really discuss that in any intelligent way. So I want to move on. I want to talk about some of the elephants in the room when we're talking about LDS marriage. Again, people.
I've met these elephants many times, so just dive on.
People, don't at me. Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah, they get it, Josh. You've already given the disclaimer. Come on.
I can't. I'm so sensitive to this kind of crap.
Come
All
on.
right, the biggest one. Polygamy. Buddy, you guys had a good thing going, and you just left it in the dust. Like, what happened there?
Okay, my great-great-grandfather, Charles Coulson Rich, was one of the top 12 ranking people in the church back in the late 19th century. He had 6 wives and 46 children, and I was a descendant of his 6th wife. So polygamy runs in my family, although it ended during his lifetime. And so his children didn't practice it.
Okay.
There's a lot of culture and theology surrounding the relevance of polygamy in the afterlife. I'm not an expert on it. I am just comfortable with the fact that we don't live it now, and I don't need to worry about it.
So, granted, the church, let's be clear, the church has moved away from polygamy. Have they officially denounced it, or have they just moved away from it?
It was officially denounced and discontinued in 1890.
Okay, so a good long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have to go into I'm not going to keep digging up the bodies on that one. Let's just move on.
All right. Well,
I did like the how many wives did your ancestor have?
6.
And how many of them were hot?
I don't know, because photos from that time period are unreliable. They could only take a photo when you had a hood on and you were frowning.
So times must have been very different back then, because I couldn't imagine having to deal with more than one other person in my life at a time. I struggle with my wife and both my kids, so I can't. Okay. I can't imagine having. This is
me either.
This is my,
doesn't sound like a good idea.
This is my hot wife. This is the wife that's good at cooking. This is the wife that gets all the chores done. Then there's schedules. Ben, you have think about the popsicle sticks but for like who gets to sleep in the master bedroom tonight. Like this is
Yeah, generally they maintain separate residences. This wasn't like that HBO show Big Love.
I did not watch Big Love.
Me either. But I'm aware of it, as I am those kinds of things. But one thing that so I grew up, and when you bring up questions about this, at least in my young youth, they just didn't want to talk about it. So they'd be like, yeah, that's something we used to do. We don't do that anymore. But they did it because at the time there was a lot of pressure. They moved across the plains. A lot of the men had died, and they needed to grow the population. This is the most efficient way to do it. So recently, I wondered if that was actually true. Like, does polygamy actually grow the population faster than traditional 1-to-1 ratio paired marriage? So I looked it up, and somebody had done a study on it, and it's actually true because of two things. One, it increases the birth rate, and two, it decreases the average age of marriage, and it increases the saturation of marriage rate. More women get married under polygamy, and they start having kids sooner. And so it actually rather increases the population faster over the alternative.
Be careful, Ben. You're sounding an awful lot like you're defending polygamy.
I'm just saying I wondered if that were actually true, and I looked it up, and it was true.
As a population growing method, polygamy achieves that objective.
Better than what we think of as traditional marriage.
Still, the cultural and moral implications are not in consideration. We're talking about just the amount of human bodies being pushed out of other human bodies.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well.
Okay. What else? Are there any other elephants in the room?
There are other elephants in the room.
Oh, geez.
The next one being interracial marriage. So I want you. I read this and it kind of floored me a bit, and so I want you to educate me on it. I read that interracial marriage was actively discouraged in the church until 2013.
So I don't know statistics. I know the church maintains a handbook that there was one that was open and one that was confidential, and I don't have access to ones back from that era. I wouldn't be surprised if it were actually in the handbook where ecclesiastical leaders were told to discourage interracial marriage. I don't know for sure.
Okay, well, this is just something that I read, so I don't know how truthful this is, but it said that there was the 1996 version of some Sunday meeting manual for adolescent boys had active discouragement for interracial marriages.
Okay, I'd have to look that up, but let's just take it as a given for this discussion that as late as 1996, the church still had published materials that discouraged interracial marriage. Yeah, I suppose that might have been the case. What?
Well, interracial marriage is a thing. Like that is, it was a Supreme Court case.
And there were
laws that got struck down in the United States. It was 1960s when they got struck down. That was, my wife looked it up today. It was Virginia versus somebody.
So on my mission, when I was having theological discussions with people, there were things that fall into this space of what I like to call the policy space. Something that's discouraged kind of falls in a weird space where it's not a principle, it's not a doctrine, it's not a commandment, it's something else. It's a cultural aberration. So if you were sitting in your office with your bishop and your interracial significant other, and you were like, hey, we're thinking about getting married, and he does whatever it means to discourage something, he would say, I discourage this. And you say, okay, we're going to do it anyway. Is that a sin? Will it prevent us from going to heaven? And you go, well, technically no. And we go like, okay, we're going to go ahead. And you do.
So, but I get that. And like, it's not expressly forbidden. So that's kudos for not outlawing interracial marriage. But at the same time, like how does that reconcile in a modern society? Like having this,
is that supposed to be a bellwether that the church is inherently false for its entire existence because it wasn't culturally enlightened?
I am not making
decades ago.
Whoa! You're adding me right now. I am not making that claim. You are jumping to ridiculous conclusions. I did not say any such thing.
But why bring this up? What's the point? Well, I'm not going to dispute whether or not interracial marriage was or wasn't encouraged or discouraged in the church. Let's say it was. So what?
I'm having a hard time formulating a way that's not combative or confrontational. The idea here being that this is one of the issues with LDS faith that seems to have lagged behind what some people would consider to be progress.
Yes. The reason I'm pushing you on this is if you Google this, this will lead you to a whole group of people that are very much against the church, think it's entirely false, leads people astray, ruins their lives. And this is one of the things they'll present as evidence that the church is false and has always been false. The way I think of it as a current believer and a believer that it is true and was true is that we don't always do the right things. We don't always do the right things. Where everyone's imperfect and make bad decisions. This was a policy that, or even a discouragement, which is kind of but it just wasn't right.
Okay. Well, let's move on from that one to another one that's just as sticky, if not stickier, and that is same-sex marriage.
This one's pretty cut and dried. This goes well beyond a discouragement. This is God created eternal existence. It's binary. There's male and female combined to procreate, and God has ordained that will constitute marriage and nothing else.
Okay, which is fine. In your faith, same-sex marriage is not a thing. Right. I can get behind that. Then, but the church has gone out of its way to try to push that value into society. It's not. This is happening the other way around. Whereas same or interracial marriage was accepted and is creeping into LDS faith. This is the LDS does not believe in same-sex marriage, and that is pushing out. The church is pushing out onto society, trying to impart those values.
Agreed.
How do you?
They did take a stronger stance back in like the late 90s when exactly.
Yeah, apparently.
But more recently, they've softened their stance as in, we support and love all of God's children, regardless of the choices they make, but we still affirm that marriage is between a man and a woman.
Okay. So, but why though? Why do we care about what consenting adults outside of the faith do?
I don't think that's the intent. But if you're coming to the church in search of exaltation or salvation or whatever you want to call it, this is the plan.
Not my premise. What I'm saying is, why? I completely.
Why oppose? Why stand up for the institution of marriage as being between a man and woman in society in general?
Yes. Why did the LDS Church go out of its way to actively fight Proposition 8 in California if it's already something that doesn't happen in the church, if there's no celestial marriage between same-sex individuals, then why does the church feel the need to then go even further and make sure it doesn't happen outside of the church?
Well, I can't speak for the church.
No. That's not what this discussion is. You will speak for the prophet right now. You're on record, sir. I'm taking notes.
I've heard all the arguments. I'm not sure what we've settled on. The most recent one is, the idea behind what do you stand up for in society? What values do you uphold? What do you believe constitutes a good society? What do you think leads people to happiness? What do you think should be our communal values? There's some we agree on unconditionally, and there's some we dispute. This is one we dispute. Hopefully we agree unconditionally on, you should not sexually abuse a child, and if you do, we will take the child away from you, even though we believe the parents should be able to raise their children the way they want.
Don't come at me with your straw man, yes, of course.
Okay, I'm sorry. You hate it whenever I give an example. How can we have a discussion like this without giving straw man examples?
Because the straw man examples makes it clear. It very much emphasizes your point that, yes, there are things that we all can agree on, and I agree with you. There are certain levels that you and I, Ben and Josh, can agree on that this is unacceptable behavior.
But I was trying to pick one that we would unconditionally agree on, so that then we could bring that principle into one that's on the border.
But culturally, if you look around the world, not everybody shares that same. Will instantly agree that this is something that is unacceptable. Yeah,
that's changed so much in our lifetime. It's hard to remember what it was like before.
Well, this is what I'm saying is cultural values.
There was near universal acceptance of the reverse 20 years ago
of opposing same-sex marriage.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess, but do you personally this is a sticky question. If I'm putting you in a corner,
it's okay. Go ahead, put me on the spot.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you personally think that it's okay if two same-sex individuals want to get married civilly outside of the church?
That's fine.
Okay. And I'm not so then how do you reconcile your feelings with the church's feelings?
I don't think the church is against that. We're not against people being happy or doing what they want to do. I think we're just trying to be clear about the actual truths of God's plan, which is we were male and female before we came to earth, and when we die, we'll carry on in his plan, and the carrying on part is the union of a man and a woman and nothing else.
Okay. Personally, I feel like that line of thinking is going to go away. Like, consenting adults and all that, people do whatever they want. I don't personally care because I don't have any spiritual association with what they do.
I get it. And if God doesn't exist, then this is all irrelevant, but maybe he does. And then there's potentially truth that transcends our societal values.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference is you believe in universal truths and I don't.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, are those all the elephants? That was a lot of elephants.
Well, those were the elephants for marriage, yeah, that I could pull up. Do you want me to talk about all the LDS elephants? I don't think we have time. But I beat you up. I feel like I beat you up there, and I feel bad for it. So you know what, Ben? I'm going to send you a gift. Let me box this up and ship it to you here in Utah.
All right. Wow, it arrived.
All right, listen, for everybody that's listening, I sent Ben a package.
Oh, that box was just to hold it stable, so that box is empty.
Yes, it is a box that has two other boxes that are there just for packing each other.
Oh, that one's empty as well. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Oh, they got shifted in shipping. I'm so upset.
Oh, did they get like flipped over or something?
No, not flipped over. Those were in there like that, but they moved. Like they're supposed to stay in their spot. All right. You want to explain what you're looking at so that we keep the listeners in suspense?
So obviously this is a custom frame made out of dark wood. It's about 16 inches by 12 inches, and it's got a black felt background behind glass, and there are 8 magic cards in there.
So this was, I don't know, you remember, like on our anniversary
So
podcast,
we did a signature spellbook episode.
Yes, it was a long time ago. We talked about the signature spellbook cards that we would have for ourselves. And I mentioned that I should make frames for those. And I made you a frame for your signature spellbook, and I sent it to you for your birthday. So happy birthday, Ben.
Nice. Thank you, man. I can't wait to fill this with my signature spellbook. I wonder if they've changed. I wonder if any are different.
In true Bad at Magic fashion, or actually in true like Josh Fleshman fashion, I started making that intending it to be a Christmas gift. And it is now June as we record. So Ben's birthday just came and went. So it is...
This is beautiful, Josh.
It's a...
Thank you very much.
Oh, on the back, you'll notice, I think where your hand was. Nope, other side. All right, so there's a brand that my wife got me for one of my either birthday or Christmas or something. She got me a brand with my logo that I like to put on the things that I make.
Oh, yeah. It's burnt into the wood there. It looks like a J and an F combined into a single letter.
Yeah. So you know,
all right.
Like wherever you move, or however long you forget about me, that frame was made by this guy.
Nice. All right. Well, I can't wait to fill it with my signature spellbook and hang it up in my room where I sort magic cards.
How old are you now?
I turned 44.
I always forget. You're so much older than me.
Well, thank you, Josh. That's a lovely gift. I appreciate it. But that was kind of an abrupt ending to our discussion on marriage, and we kind of ended on, I don't want to call it a sour note because I've had the discussion 1,000 times. It might be traumatic for you, but it's not for me.
Well, the positive note is your son, your oldest son, just got married to a lovely girl. All the love and praise and hope and everything from me, at least, that everything works out and everything goes well and that they continue to love each other. And they have an excellent example in you and Alicia to uphold as this is how you make a marriage work. This is how you get through the problems and continue to grow together as people. You mature together, you discover things about each other, and you discover things about yourselves as a couple as you grow old together.
Well done. Yeah. So, Michael and Gwen, if you're listening right now, I didn't have a chance this week to give you my loving father/father-in-law speech. You know, we didn't do like a dinner where I gave a toast or something like that. So here's my toast. I had said, maybe a bit regretfully, that there was no one that told me the truth about marriage. That no one that told me that there were going to be times where you didn't agree with the other person, you didn't see eye to eye, and maybe you even questioned your own wisdom in uniting your lives and making a commitment before God, angels, and these witnesses to be with this person forever. And those moments are going to come. But there was wisdom in you selecting this other person, in deciding to unite their life with them, and there's something purifying and enlightening about subjugating yourself to the greater whole that you'd made together. And as long as they're a worthy person that's not trying to do something destructive to you and or them or both, it's worthwhile to forgive, forget, and move on. And it won't always be bliss. There will be times where you just got to press through, but it's worth it. If you picked a good person and you treat them well, it will elevate both of you to a greater height than you could have achieved individually. And through that union, you will find purpose and happiness beyond anything that you imagined. And, it brings children, and it brings shared joy and experience, and ultimately just leads to a happy, fulfilling life. Married people live longer. Married people have healthier outcomes. These are statistical realities. And if you believe in God, there's something else to be had in the afterlife if you choose to be married and unite and stay true to someone your whole life. And I chose well with Alicia, and now I just got to treat her well, and hopefully she stays around and keeps me. And I hope, Michael, you and Gwen can do the same, that you can treat each other and live a happy life together.
Ben, that was so beautiful that I am going to suppress my urge to make a crass joke about hormones again.
I love when you suppress your urges to make crass jokes.
All right, well, that's it. That was too touching. I can't take any more. If you like what we do, please share us with a friend. I feel like that's the least you can do. You enjoy it. Maybe your friends will enjoy it too. If you really want to help us out, take your phone out of your pocket and give us a good rating on the podcast player of your choice. You would be shocked at the visibility we get from that thing. And if you just cannot get enough of us, if you want to hear every wedding toast that Ben makes for all of his children from now until the end of time, consider becoming a supporter on our Patreon page.
And if you enjoyed this episode, maybe you want to give your own opinions, maybe you want to give a stronger defense of marriage than I did, I'll create an open thread on our Reddit subreddit, Reddit/r/bad@magic. I'll put up, as usual, a photo album and an episode announcement on our Facebook page. You can go to one of those two places, join in the discussion, let your voice be heard, and interact with us online. We love it when you do. And that's it. Thanks for listening to the Bad at Magic podcast.
See you next time.